The film No Small Matter, which was directed by Danny Alpert and released on June 21st, 2019, describes some of the prevalent issues regarding early childhood education in the United States. It brings our attention to the lack of priority our society has for early childhood education. There are included interviews with families, child care workers, doctors, workers in the prison industry, and so many additional unique perspectives that help to create a web of understanding for the viewer. I will be discussing 3 relevant issues regarding young children, their families, and their educators. I advocate for the idea that every child deserves an equitable and valuable education alongside fair compensation for child care workers. Prioritizing these aspects in our society would lead to enhanced familial bonds, the cultivation of successful individuals, and greater dedication from child care professionals to their roles. The first theme from No Small Matter that I would like to discuss is the additional stress that finding early childhood care puts on families. With early childhood care costing around the same amount as in-state college tuition, many families cannot afford this route for their children. In the film, one mother described how she was forced to quit her job due to not being able to find a child care option that was both affordable and reliable. Another couple described how they both had to work opposing shifts, with the husband working night shifts and caring for their son during the day, and the wife working day shifts. They described how deeply draining this cycle was, but how there was no other way. This is an unfortunate reality for many families and creates a cycle of toxic stress in the home. Parents want to provide for their children, but it is at the cost of their mental well-being. If parents are providing an early childhood education for their children but are also working a full-time job and dealing with other factors, they are going to have a hard time giving their children the quality of education that they deserve, and their children may end up falling behind the class average once they reach kindergarten. On top of this, families have to consider the right path for their children based on aspects of their identity, such as race, gender, religion, or all of these things. Our education system is very westernized and does not generally honor other cultures, which does not feel right to a lot of parents. Oftentimes, it is more difficult for parents to consider what path is best for their children when things are defined by gender or race, but not both. In a New York Times article discussing intersectionality, Kimberly Crenshaw states, "Intersectionality is simply about how certain aspects of who you are will increase your access to the good things or your exposure to the bad things in life. Like many other social justice ideas, it stands because it resonates with people's lives, but because it resonates with people's lives, it's under attack. There's nothing new about defenders of the status quo criticizing those who are demanding that injustices be addressed. It's all a crisis over a sense that things might actually have to change for equality to be real. A lot of people don't want to admit that everyone deserves equal access to education due to feeling entitled to their success regardless of what privileges they were given to get there. We need to acknowledge intersectionality in education because the reality is that every family is unique, and we need an education system that is malleable and can be accommodating to each student's unique identity." The second theme that I would like to discuss is the relationship between access to early education and social outcomes. The social outcomes I am referring to are financial success, academic success, interpersonal relations, career, overall happiness, and the continuation or ending of generational cycles. Although it may not seem directly connected, having an early childhood education creates a direct link to the outcome of one's life. I would like to mention some of the statistics that were brought up in No Small Matter. By age 3, children from high-income families have heard an average of 30 million more words. By age 5, they've spent 1,300 more hours in places like libraries and museums. By the first day of kindergarten, higher-income kids are already as much as 2 years ahead. A low-income 4th grader who is already behind in reading is 13 times more likely to drop out of high school. Dropping out of high school makes one 50% more likely to be unemployed and 8 times more likely to be incarcerated. With these statistics, it is undeniable that one's early childhood education or lack thereof will alter the course of their lives. This makes it extremely hard for children to break the generational cycles of pain that their family may suffer from. If a child does not have the right resources at home, then they are unlikely to find those resources within their schooling, because the education system is designed for those who already come from a background of privilege to succeed. Although there has been research done regarding this topic, there are more themes to explore in terms of children's identity and background and how their experiences plus their early childhood education affect their future. In a study on how young children's ethnic racial identity moderates the impact of early discrimination experiences on child behavior problems, the following problem was addressed. Structural inequalities such as racism and sexism, as well as biased prejudicial beliefs and discriminatory actions that are supported by these systems, are pernicious threats to positive development. However, research on the developmental significance of perceived discrimination experiences in childhood has lagged behind discrimination studies in adolescent and adult samples. With such a clear link between early childhood education and the course of one's life, it needs to continue to be addressed by researchers. Behavioral problems do not magically start once one enters elementary schools. They are often caused by inequities that begin at a very young age. The third theme that I would like to discuss is the lack of funding for teachers and preschools. The United States places very low compared to other countries around the world when it comes to funding for education ages 0 to 5. Only 3% of our country's education spending goes towards early childhood, showing a lack of priority for some of the most important developmental years of our lives. With this lack of funding for preschools, preschool teachers are earning poverty-level wages. Child care workers have consistently been earning in the bottom 3 to 5% of the national wage scale, and the lack of respect and priority for their work seems to speak to a deeper problem within our society. There are the unlivable wages that preschool teachers are expected to live from, as well as the expectation to provide a proper education while struggling to pay bills and get by. Child care workers need to be extremely patient in a way that most jobs where adults are interacting with each other don't require. Children under their care are also likely to require more emotional support than older children do. A lot of toddlers are not ready to be separated from their parents yet and need that comfort. Since most child care workers are also women, they are faced with the additional responsibility of providing maternal comfort. Although they are supposed to provide this warm and loving comfort, this is easier said than done when facing financial turmoil. If a child care teacher has to work multiple jobs and is struggling, they are more likely to carry that tension into the workplace and project it onto children. In my opinion, the preconception that preschool teachers are not important, combined with the fact that they are mainly women, links to the patriarchal theme of women's role in society not being honored. Child care workers have immense responsibility in shaping the minds of our youth, but they do not have the proper resources to do so. In a writing discussing the multiple identities and literacies of Black girlhood, a conversation about creating spaces for Black girl voices, the following is stated. School spaces should be transformative, and educators must be intentional and deliberate in teaching practices that serve to embolden students to be agents of collective community change. Literacy learning requires a commitment to the whole child and the environments we create for them. If we prioritize the needs of child care workers, they will be more capable of providing the proper education and care for children of all identities. We need to stop pushing off this problem because generational change starts with young children who have not yet experienced many of the hardships and inequalities of society. What I learned from this film was a new perspective towards early childhood education. I never realized how important it is for children to receive an early education. I also did not realize the gap that can be created based on early childhood opportunities and how it has a direct effect on the outcome of one's life. I picture every fourth grader who feels behind, feels like they aren't smart enough, aren't good enough, and carries that pain with them to the point of rejecting school. No small matter also helped to develop my view of child care workers. I can see now that they have chosen to dedicate their lives to the greater good instead of following a more convenient path of monetary wealth. They understand their sacrifice, as well as the sacrifice of every parent who must be separated from their child at such a young age to make a living for their family. Thinking about all this helps me have more empathy for those who make society feel like a less safe place, because the chances are that the cards were stacked against them from the start. I think that the filmmakers did an amazing job here, and they were able to convey the necessary messages while providing the many perspectives that all seem to align. Hopefully, we can continue to spread their message and work towards a more equitable future for our youth. There are many educated people who are also advocating and placing importance on the areas that we need to work on as a society. The following quote is from an article addressing race and inequity in the classroom. Conversations about race and inequity are important in early childhood classrooms. Sometimes teachers feel that avoiding such conversations is developmentally appropriate because children are not ready to discuss why and how racial discrimination exists. However, research demonstrates that a teacher can accurately and meaningfully teach about race and other somewhat complicated identity markers if she presents the material in an engaging way that connects with the children's experience. This is all relevant to my life and future career because I am studying studio art and planning to teach people how to embrace and heal their creative expression. With childhood care being devalued by society, children are mostly not being taught how to embrace their creative instincts. This is also generational, as a lot of children are not encouraged to make art unless the adults in their life are artists. I want to work with children who aren't already being encouraged to make art to make sure they embrace that side of themselves from a young age. In conclusion, I believe that all children are deserving of an equal and valuable education, and that child care workers deserve to be paid more fairly. If our society placed more importance on these things, then we would have more healing within familial structures, more successful adults, and more ability for child care workers to commit to their work. I see a future where our education system takes into account underprivileged children and is designed to compensate for the resources that they may be lacking in their home lives.